Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, for checking out the series. Of course, you know what to do if you like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists. And I've got one of them on today, one of my all-time favorites, William Reid, the Jesus and Mary Chain. They're back with a brand new record called Glasgow Eyes. Hello, sir.
Hello, how you doing, Kyle?
I'm great, and it's such a pleasure to have you on here. A big old fan for a very long time. I think this is the first time you and I have been able to talk. I've talked with Jim before, but first I want to say it's such a treat anytime you all give new music, and especially when it's so good. This record is fantastic. So I just want to throw the compliments your way to begin with, as a congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I quite like it as well.
What does it take at this point to is it any different to make a record? I mean, do they have starting points?
Um, yeah, this one was a bit weird. We started in October 2019, which was just before the lockdown, and we managed to get like I don't know 4 or 5 decent backing tracks. Then the lockdown happened, and we went back to it a year later. Uh, Worked on the backing tracks, and thought we had an album recorded, and then the engineer at the studio told us that he had lost all of our recordings.
Oh no.
Yeah, so that was how the album started, which wasn't really a great start. And we were kind of like, to be honest, when you've recorded something and you lose it, it's kind of like it's incredibly painful. And yeah, so that's how the album started, and it wasn't a start; it was a horrible false start. And so we just like the Chumbawamba song says, you pick yourself up and you get back up again, and we did, and we went to Glasgow and we basically recorded it most of it last summer, last spring and into summer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I can't imagine. You hear about, like some artists will get, the laptop stolen or the tape stolen, back in the day. And it
Yeah.
just does feel like it would be defeating. But it also makes sense. Like I was thinking about when Jim and I did an interview probably right before this, because we were talking about the Monkey album and of course your most recent record, and he seemed very optimistic that it was going to be, we're going to get right back on the horse, we're going to make another record really really quickly, and and
Yeah.
things happen. I assumed the pandemic was part of it. Hearing about this, when you go back in, then when so everything is lost and you have to start back over, like, I mean, do you have anything scratched to remember what it went? Or are you just going by your memory? Are you trying to replicate those
uh,
moments?
we had some, to be honest, most of it was just gone. We had a couple of demos where there was maybe a couple of nice guitar riffs or whatever that was preserved, but it was just heartbreaking. And I've been in this business for 40 years, and the only time anything close to this has happened is like 1989. A tape op scrubbed over a mix once, and it was no big deal. Even then, it was a bit painful, but it's fuck it, we'll do another mix.
Yeah.
You know, but this was like 5 or 6 almost complete songs, and it's just, yeah, it's just really heartbreaking. But it worked out. It's like, and it kind of proved resilience and commitment, really.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I can't tell anything. I mean, these songs sound fantastic to me. But interestingly, because of this, I
Yeah.
guess. That ends
Well,
up
actually,
working out.
I'll tell you another thing. So a couple of the songs, two or three of the songs that we re-recorded, we done much better. I'll
Mhm.
tell you that. I felt in my heart that, like, wow, this went a different way from the way we did it before. So I kind of like, well, I won't forgive the engineers. I won't forgive them because in this day and age, to not back up digital recordings
Right.
is just in fucking sane, you know? I thought it was impossible to lose something these days because you've got so many hard drives that
Mhm.
you can put stuff on. In the old days, maybe 25 years ago in Pro Tools, maybe that could happen. But in 2020 or whatever, I just feel it's like almost like sabotage or extreme stupidity. I
Right.
don't know, but anyway, it worked too. I don't want to go on too much about that. It
Yeah.
worked.
Well, and my other point being that because of how this happened, now this album does arrive, as you mentioned, on the 40th anniversary. Like, and that's, whether you mean to or not, that's kind of a nice thing to sort of,
Yeah,
at least for a media story, at least for your publicity.
yeah, yeah.
Do you think it lends anything to the record? I mean, obviously you were recording it before the 40th, but now that it's here, do you find that there's any kind of syncopation there?
Um, I don't think we were aware while we were recording that it was 40 years ago. I mean, 40 years is a long time, and I don't know. If I'm alive in 20 years, then it'll be 60 years. I think what's changed in the whole world is, for a start, adults aren't growing up anymore. Rock stars aren't retiring and fading away anymore.
Mhm.
You know, Kim Deal's just made an amazing new record, and she's 70 years old.
Mhm.
The Stones made a decent attempt.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, for a bunch of 80-year-old guys, I would call that a decent attempt. That's how I'm saying. And the Lady Gaga thing I thought was brilliant with them. But anyway, my point is the world has changed. Nobody's fading away unless they're forced to. Nobody's growing up unless they're forced to. And like, for instance, I remember talking to my mother and father and asking them why they never went to see the Beatles and Stones. And my mum would say, well, we were married and too old. I said, what age were you in 63? She's like, 25, 24. I'm like, and you never went to see the Beatles and the Stones because you thought you were too old.
At 24, at 25.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's insane. And it's like, I saw an article recently and it was like the Golden Girls.
Mhm.
And you thought they were old ladies, but they were like 49, 53, things like that.
I've
And
seen that one too. That one, it blows your mind. It really
it
does.
does. So this is a new world we're living in, and I don't think anybody really thinks they're over the hill anymore.
Mhm.
If you've got a wee bit of spunk in you, a wee bit of juice, I think that's all you need.
Yeah. Do you find that do you I don't know if you can answer. I'm trying to figure out if I can answer this question as I'm asking it to you. Do you find that you're pulling from the same place, to find that fire when you're songwriting, or when you're recording, where you're trying to pull off the performance?
Do you mean like influences and stuff?
Well, not
Because I
influence.
think I think that's changed like such a lot from when the band started. When we started 40 years ago, for instance, I hated jazz. I hated atonal music. I couldn't understand it. I thought it was just rubbish and made up nonsense. And now I'm like, now I get it. Now I get it.
Mhm.
And now I get all the prog rock bands as well that I used to like laugh at. I'm like, I'm like now a big Robert Fripp fan, and like King Midas and uh, anyway, yeah, things have changed, and there's different, and I think Jim would say the same as well. You know, like uh, who you are now is 40 years different, 40 years of life experiences and tragedies and everything. But yeah, it's good to be still having a bit of fire in you,
Yeah.
when you're old.
Those bands that you surprise, and I've gone through that too, especially the bands that like, I don't know if you did the same thing, but like a lot of people when you're young you sort of rebel against the music that your parents listen to, and as you get older you realize that music is in your DNA. Like one day I wake up and like, oh wow, I'm a Bob Seger fan. I guess maybe I've
Yeah,
always been about unapologetically, and I still love Sonic
yeah.
Youth at the same time, and you can do that. But I will say, when I looked at the track list and I see one called the Eagles and the Beatles, and that was not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And you're singing about the Stones, of course, so I didn't know if that was tongue in cheek or if like, where did the Eagles play in this?
Well, there was actually a verse that never made the cut, and that was and the Eagles were mentioned, and the song was called "The Eagles and the Beatles." And then I cut the verse with the Eagles in it, and I thought, well, it's not the Eagles and the Beatles anymore. But I like the title, so I thought, well, I'll keep the title. But it's basically a song about uh, my love for music, and the reason I wanted to put the Eagles in there is because I wanted to show people that like uh, how eclectic we are. I mean, in 1977, I was a punk. I was in the Clash and the Sex Pistols and Subway Sect, but I was also into Peter Frampton, and the Eagles' greatest hits in Hotel California was huge in my house in 1977. So
Undeniable
we'd be,
song.
yeah, we'd be playing like Peter Frampton and then the Clash, and I remember thinking when punk happened, I don't have to give up things to be a punk. Most people I think did. They were like, well, I'm not going to listen to Led Zeppelin anymore because I'm a punk. But I think what what uh, differentiates fans or from musicians is I think musicians will love anything
Mhm.
and will say, yeah, I love the Barbie song because
Mhm.
and like a lot of people are like too cool for school to admit things like that. Where I think your average musician will go, I love the Barbie song. Of
Mhm.
course they do, great little record. And well, I know we were like that, and you were saying rebelling against your parents' records. We never did that.
Mhm.
Loved my parents' records. My parents listened to Jim Reeves and Johnny Cash and Nat King Cole, and I didn't grow up like thinking this was crap music. I loved it. And same way when punk happened, you don't give up what you love just because something new's coming along.
Right. Yeah, and it is interesting because, of course, there's one way that the history books paint it, and for a lot of people, as you said, you have to give up Led Zeppelin if you're going to like the Pistols,
Well,
and
some
then
people did. I know some people did. They gave that up because
yeah,
now they were a punk.
right.
And I didn't see. I thought you could be a punk and be a Burt Bacharach fan.
Uh-huh. And I think that's what a lot of my favorites. I mean, Joe Strummer would have said the same thing. He showed his
Yeah,
influences there. He didn't give up. Even when talking with some of the Bunnymen, of course, they were into the Doors at a time when it was very uncool, and those
yeah,
ended up being my favorite bands because you can hear the eclectic sounds. As with the Mary Chain too. Like
yeah,
it's all there. I really appreciate that, and hearing that, and like on this record, you have very noisy moments as
yeah,
might be expected. And then you've got songs like Mediterranean X Film and Second of June. I mean, these are fun songs and sweet songs.
yeah.
Do you realize when you're being pulled one way or the other?
Um, you mean while making an album or while making a song?
When you're making a song, if it's going to go in that noisy, dark place, or if it's going to be Beatles pop-esque.
Well, what I'll tell you what happens with me anyway. I write a song and I hear the record in my head, and I don't think it's ever worked out that way. It's never what you've got in your head happens on a record, and I think it's a good thing because it's usually better. It's usually like bigger, more expanded, and like I said, a couple of the songs, um, like the Mediterranean X film, that we lost some of the recordings of that. Well, that's when we re-recorded that. It went a totally different way. I don't know why. Something happened and it just went a totally different way. And I was like, "Thank you, whoever it is, the god of music," because I think a lot of musicians will tell you this as well. A lot of time in the studio, accidents happen. Mm-hmm. Things like somebody will touch a switch they shouldn't have been switched on, and then bam, the sound changes, and suddenly you're all excited, and it's like, wow, we thought we were going this way, and now we're going this way. What's going to happen if we go this way? And yeah, I think I think the songs, they pull you. You think you're producing the song, and sometimes the song is producing you. It's taking you somewhere. Like especially that song. That song was so slight. It just had a little riff, and then when we re-recorded it, all these other little things just started happening. And I played the wrong chord once. I should have played a G, and I think I played an F minor, and it sounded. It was like, hey, who knew an F minor should have been where a G was? I would never have done that, but it's somehow the bass is playing a note that makes it work or something. Mm-hmm. That's the magic of recording. I think, I don't know, maybe some people produce music and what's finished is what they heard, but knowing me, I want to be taken somewhere. I don't mind.
Yeah. Well, those moments happen on here, and there's moments, of course, inevitably with any song that will, for me, it reminds me of other little moments. I wrote down American Born. As soon as American Born came on, I started thinking of Rocky Erickson's "I Walk with a Zombie."
Yeah.
Lyrically, it has nothing to do with that. There's a little melodic thing right there to it, and
I walk with a zombie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's perfect.
God, I hope I don't get sued.
No. See, that's I always like if I were a performing musician, like I would take those moments live, put them together, just make it work as a whole thing. But that's anyway, that I know that's not a question. Just one of those moments I hear that and I'm like, oh man, that's a great thing. But I also imagine as a songwriter, like, how often do you get in the way of yourself? Oh, I can't play that because it sounds like this. Yeah. Or do you throw your hands up and go, fuck it?
Well, I think sometimes, like, I don't think we ever sound like anybody, even if we tried, and we have tried sometimes. And I think when you're I don't know, when you're like not the greatest virtuoso musician, I think, like for instance, I think if we tried to sound like Led Zeppelin, it would sound like nothing like Led Zeppelin, because there's no way I could play like Jimmy Page. There's no, and it's no way. But in our own way, something new would happen. I know because we've done this before. We've in fact, when we first started, we would say things like, "This is a Ramones song," or "This is a Subway Six song," stuff like that. And then people would say, "That sounds nothing like the Ramones," and we'd go, "It does. It really does." And we'd go, "No, it doesn't." And we'll go, "Oh well, fair enough. We'll take it. It's a Mary Jane song." And I don't think I don't think I don't think I ever want to get too clever, too great with my guitar and my production. I always want it to be that 10% of don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I think that it really, believe it or not, that don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Sometimes, like, is the inspiration you need.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% believe that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And that's, you find the people that become too much of a virtuoso
yeah.
and they master it's impressive what they can do, but then you find out that their creative spirit has sort of left, like
Well, I remember seeing reading an interview with Bernard uh, Sumner from New Order, and somebody was talking about it was a guitar magazine. It was quite funny actually, and somebody was talking about how's your skill level improved since you started in 1979 or whatever, and he said my skill level is like it hasn't improved one single bit. I'm just as good or bad as I was then, but I don't need to be, But and I remember thinking, I know what you're saying exactly. I know what you're saying. There's Robert Fripp's in the world, and there's no Jeff Beck's anymore, but there's Robert Fripp's in the world, and that's fucking great.
mm-hmm.
But there's also Bernard Sumners that can play like 2 or 3 notes and take you to the same places, dun, 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 and that's my type of playing.
Yeah.
I'm not Jeff Beck or Jimi Hendrix. I'm Bernard Sumner and Peter Hook.
Well, and thank goodness, because I needed your music. People needed you to sound like that. That's why it worked.
Yeah.
You fit exactly where you needed to be. And I don't mean that as some pie in the sky statement, and I don't know how those things work, but thank goodness it did, I guess is what I'm getting at. Does while we're still sort of talking about things like this, the final track, while it takes some creative spelling, with Hey Lou Reid, does that have anything? Did you have Lou Reid in mind when you're doing that song? Does that have any
I
connection
thought I
like
would
that?
write. It's basically a tribute to uh, Lou Reed and the Jesus and Mary Chain, and uh, uh, it's about it's about the Jesus and Mary Chain and the Velvet Underground, and I think more than any group, they really inspired us because we were talking about non-virtuoso and simple guitar lines and all that. That's what they were, you know. They were like incredibly simple, and I think anybody who's ever picked up an instrument knows the simple stuff is not easy. You know, you write, you can be Jimi Hendrix, and everybody knows you're brilliant. But sometimes, like playing your little 2 or 3 note solos, people don't get it. They don't get how that can be as brilliant as as any. And am I answering your question? What was your question again?
Yeah, because we're talking about Lou Reed, just what, as we're talking about how sometimes
There's a lot of arrogance with that song, and I'm not saying we're like the equal of the Velvet Underground. That's not what this song's saying. But basically, what it's saying is that we have a name. Our name phonetically sounds like Lou Reed, and we have this. I feel this connection. I feel like, growing up, I felt like me and Jim were really outsiders, and just like a lot of my favorite musicians. I don't think they were popular in school. I don't think they had, the this the most well-adjusted minds, and I think well-adjusted people, uh, to be well-adjusted people are almost psychotic. That Christian Bale character, and like, do you ever sometimes see really well-adjusted people and think, what's going on there? Where did they hide?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well, I don't know if I'm answering your
you do.
question
Yeah,
now.
you got it. It was perfect. It was perfect. I'm just thinking about some of these songs, and again, I think I could go through every one of them. I will say quickly, sort of to wrap up here too, a long, because it is a big year. You again, it's the 40th anniversary year. You have this record, Glasgow Eyes, and you have an autobiography. Like you guys wrote the book, right? The book is coming out as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, when is that happening?
Fuck, I don't know.
That's easy enough. Nor
I've
should.
really no
Well,
idea.
well, I guess really what I'm getting to, the real question here is, does this tell the entire story, or is it one of those biographies that sort of take us up to a certain points?
Um, it's not finished yet,
Okay.
and uh, but I think it takes us up to like the end of the the 90s. I'm not sure if we're going to like it's still to be edited, so I don't really know if we're going to include the later stuff. No. It's just in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's
Uh,
ghostwritten. You know, you have to get things ghostwritten and stuff.
well, that's kind of a popular thing. I mean, Bobby Gillespie's book. I had him on recently. We talked about that, and the Bunnymen book, and they all go up to a certain point, and I think that's actually really smart. It gives you a second book if you want it. I don't know if that's part of it, but it's like you get two books
Yeah,
out of a
I'm not sure.
career.
Yeah, I'm not sure I wanted though because I thought like doing the book was actually uh, to me it was like going to the dentist. To be honest,
Mhm.
it's like being asked to remember like what happened in 1984 and what happened in 1992 on Lollapalooza, and I'm like, I don't remember so much. I really don't remember. And I mean, I've always loved like all biographies and stuff, but sometimes like I, when you're actually in somebody's autobiography or in some book, like somebody wrote some book about creation a few years ago, and I was mentioned in it a couple of times. And I remember thinking, that never happened. Surely that's not how I remember. And yeah, I think every autobiography is a little bit of fantasy
Mhm.
because I don't think people I don't think five people remember the same thing one way. I think there'd be five different stories. Like even a week later, let alone 20, 30 years later, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel for you, and because the same thing. Like, luckily, no one's asking for my life story, but my
Yeah,
20s, I see the pictures. I'm like, don't remember that at all.
yeah.
I was under
Or
the
sometimes
influence
you
for
just don't
most
want,
of it, but
I just don't like to like remembering. It's like, it's like, okay, things happened. I need to talk about it, it's like, and what our profession, if you're a plumber, the people come and say, so what was that toilet like you fixed 40 years ago? What were you thinking when you were doing that? And it's like, I don't know.
jiggle the handle, left the.
Yeah, I fixed it and it worked. And then I had a beer.
Oh man. Well, I
Yeah.
will say, even with that, I'll still look forward to reading it because I love what you guys do. I do. I love what you guys do. And this record is just another chapter in that I'm so happy that you guys continue to do what you do. So
Uh,
seriously,
uh,
thank you so much. Thank you so much for the music, and thanks so much for taking the time to talk about it. It really has been a pleasure.
all right, then. Thank you, Kyle. Wasn't too bad.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week, new one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.